Hey, it's Cynthia Thurlow. I wanted to come on and continue a conversation that I already started this morning. I was on our local ABC affiliate talking about graceful aging or ways to age most healthfully. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Cynthia Thurlow. I am a nurse practitioner and also a functional nutritionist, and I encourage clients to eat for their health. And so one of the ways that you can do this and the ways to age more gracefully, because let's be honest, ladies, aging is tough. I don't care what anyone says. You can be the most well-adjusted, confident, self-assured person, but if you're like anyone else, myself included, you want to do it in the best way possible. And so I'm going to give you 6 or 7 ways that you can age more gracefully. I always start with food. I want you to think about brightly pigmented food. If you caught my segment this morning, you saw that I left all of my brightly pigmented fruits and vegetables at my house, which didn't do me any good. But thankfully I had an iPad and I was able to pull up a photo from a market in Barcelona, and that served as my brightly pigmented foods. But brightly pigmented foods have things like phytonutrients. I'm using this bright pepper. Things like blueberries and blackberries. I have cabbage over here as well. These are foods that are designed to have special nutrients that we know. Think of anything that's bright purple, red, or even blue, like I mentioned earlier. And we know that these are best consumed with fat for absorption. So if you were going to have blueberries and almonds, if you are going to have cabbage sauteed in ghee or coconut oil or what have you, we know that these foods do several things. They protect our brain, they protect our gut, and they reduce inflammation. We know inflammation is at the basis of nearly all disease states in our bodies. They also support synthesis of neurotransmitters, along with protein, things like chicken and turkey. And today I used the examples of wild sardines because they pack well as pole-caught tuna, as being examples of healthy proteins, but also things like pork and beef and chicken. Obviously pastured or farm-raised are best, but all of these things work collectively to help support neurotransmitter synthesis, which impacts our mood. Things like serotonin that you probably have heard of, norepinephrine, epinephrine, all really, really important. And those healthy fats that I touched on. I have almonds here, which my good friend Ambra mentioned were from California. And then I have these activated maca mesquite walnuts. If anyone recalls from other videos, I absolutely love maca. It's one of those adaptogenic herbs that helps with sex drive, helps with energy. It's just a really easy way. Best caught in the first part of the menstrual cycle between days 1 through 15. If we're looking at that. And then the things you need to avoid nutrition-wise. You want to avoid too much sugar, too much dairy, too much gluten, too much grains, those adulterated fats, canola oil, soybean oil. They're really bad because our body doesn't actually recognize those fats in particular as anything that we can actually break down. So when clients are talking about being inflamed and feeling like they're fat and they're bloated, the first thing we start ratcheting back on are all those processed foods, which you know do not contribute to aging gracefully by any stretch of the imagination. The other technique that I like to really use is intermittent fasting. If you know anything about me, you know that I love intermittent fasting. It is a great way to kind of dial in on the amount of food that we're eating every day. It potentiates the amount of time that we have digestive rest, which is really important for multiple things. First and foremost, autophagy. It's a big fancy word, but it's a really important word. It's a word that talks about removing cellular debris, ensuring we're getting rid of diseased cells. Really important, especially as we're seeing escalating rates of cancer. You want your bodies to have this digestive rest so it can actually do this cellular repair, and it really comes down to supporting cellular metabolism, supporting those mitochondrial cells, which is the powerhouse of our cells. We also know that intermittent fasting does other things. It helps stabilize our blood sugar. It helps us use fat efficiently for fuel. So it helps us break down ketones, which is a much more fat efficient fuel source than using sugar. And we also know that it also helps with reducing the amount of free radicals and also helps support a calming hormone in our body, calming neurotransmitter called GABA. Next up, we want to think about how chemicals in our environment impact our aging process. And yes, I'm talking about blue light. So blue light comes from our electronics. And unfortunately I have a barking dog. Blue light comes from our electronics. It's things like from our iPads, from our iPhones, from our TVs. And so those things disrupt melatonin. Fortunately, I don't have a kid at home to harness them. Disrupts melatonin in the brain, and melatonin affects our sleep quality. If we don't get enough of it, also impacts cortisol, which we know is that fight or flight hormone that we actually have more of as we get older. And so we want to do everything we can to support ensuring that there's less cortisol floating around than what we need. Obviously we need cortisol, but we don't want to have too much. We know that heavy metals disrupt the aging process. Arsenic, which we find in soil where rice is grown, fluoride, which is found in our drinking water, and we don't need, as well as our toothpaste, aluminum in our personal care products, like our deodorants, we really don't need in our light. And these things actually damage that mitochondria. Again, they damage our cells, so again, does not contribute to aging gracefully. We know that certain pharmaceutical agents, many that I probably prescribed during my lifetime, but things that are more common, like statin agents that help with cholesterol, Tylenol over the counter, very damaging to our cells, and certainly not something you want to be taking with any frequency. I'm going to briefly touch on mold. It's certainly not an area that I concentrate in, but moldy foods and then mold in the environment both can be very disruptive to supporting healthy cells. And then, ensuring that you're getting enough, tapping into that parasympathetic process in our body. And by that I mean making you're getting good quality sleep. I'm a huge fan of using magnesium sprays, magnesium soaks, sleeping in a cold, dark room, ensuring that you are absolutely positively wearing a sleep mask or something that keeps it very cold and dark so that it really tells your body that it's time to rest. A lot of the blue light that I touched on that can be so disruptive to our cells and actually very damaging can also disrupt our ability to sleep properly. So, cell phones, iPads, TVs off 60, 90 minutes before bed. If you must have those things on, make sure you're wearing UVAX blue blocking glasses, which you can find on Amazon. I have no affiliate with them, but it's one of my favorite strategies to use with clients. And then, practicing things like meditation and yoga, super important. And I'm not talking about yoga like Bikram yoga or hot yoga. I'm talking about restorative yoga, super, super beneficial. Meditation, we know structurally changes the brain. And if you geek out on science like I do, that's how I remember how important it is for us to be doing. And then, one of my best and favorite techniques, and actually anyone who works one-on-one with me gets one of these little gratitude journals. Being grateful. I can't overemphasize enough how important it is to really tap into that parasympathetic rest and repose part of our bodies. Just being grateful, being grounded, being surrounded by people that you love. Anyway, these are a couple highlights from the video that was done with ABC this morning. I didn't get to touch on as much detail in that video as I did in this one, but I'd love to hear from you. What are things that you're really interested in learning more about? I got some comments a few days ago asking for more information on how adaptogenic herbs can be really beneficial, and I'm actually doing a video with the owner of the Weekly Juicery later this week, and she is my go-to expert on a lot of adaptogens beyond the knowledge that I have, which is pretty extensive, but she has even gone beyond what I have already learned, and so I'm going to learn from her, and I'm going to certainly share with you all. Again, this is Cynthia Thurlow, nurse practitioner. I'd love for you to sign up for my newsletter. It only goes out about once a week. I don't spam, I don't message you excessively, but I would really love to grow my list, and I'd love for you to be part of it. Have a great night.